Hello, how you guys doing?
Hey, what's up?
Well, my laptop is not functioning very well with Zoom, so I'm using my um, telephone. I actually have a desk phone, believe it or not.
It came in handy.
Yeah, yeah, because I do the VoIP thing. So let's go ahead. I think there was just a teeny bit more to chapter 10, and then we'll get into chapter 11. And then I want to show you guys a little bit about draw.io. I hope that you guys have started to play with it a little bit so that you can get familiar with using draw.io and be able to complete that assignment. I'm not looking for anything super fancy at all. I'm just looking for some evidence that you have experimented with draw.io. So why don't we just go ahead and look at that draw.io right now. So let me share a screen here. Okay, let me bring my chat window back out over here. Okay, now draw.io is a completely online program. You don't have to download anything. And you can log into draw.io. You don't even have to create an account if you already have a Google account. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to just store something on my Google Drive. You can store it on your local drive, or you can store it on the Microsoft OneDrive, but I'm just going to store it. Excuse me, turn my phone off. I want to restore it on my Google Drive here. Gee whiz, my phone's blowing up. Hang on. Turn all that off. Okay. Where are my hobbits at? Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I'm going to click authorize and remember me. I'll use that account for Google. I'm going to create a new diagram. I'm going to create new diagram. So can you guys see on my screen okay, first of all?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, hopefully you figured out how I got there. It was pretty quick to get there. I just went to draw.io. I already have created an account and I'm using my Gmail. As you can see, there's lots and lots of templates to choose from. If you scroll down to, let's see, let's look at network. Okay, since we're in a networking class, so we'll click on network. And let's scroll down to this very bottom one, which is a very simple little wireless network. And let's use that one as a template. Use root folder. No, let's pick no. I'm going to create a new folder underneath my Google Drive and just call it draw.io. I may have one already. Let's take a look. Should be able to create one. Oh, Google Drive, here we go. Yeah, I just put it under MIS 4477. And draw.io is a really simple program to use. It's a little bit like Visio. Has anybody ever used anything else for drawing anything?
We have to use this to make ERDs in the database class.
Oh, you are already doing this with entity relationship models. Good. Well, that's good to know. So what we're going to use it for is making network models now, or network diagrams. Here's what's kind of cool about draw.io, which I like as opposed to just using a normal drawing program, is I've got an icon here. First of all, that's an actual picture. And if you want to add a new icon, like you have a computer, a specific computer, and you don't have an icon already for it, you can simply find a picture of a computer online that you like. Let's say, oh, I like that picture. Actually, I could probably just use that from right there. You save that image. Just go to downloads. And then actually upload that picture into draw.io. And maybe some of you guys know this already, but I just thought I'd show you. It's pretty easy to use. Where's my downloads folder? I'm just going to throw that in there. There it is. So it's as simple as that. Just kind of nice. And if I want to make another one of these things, I can simply do a copy and paste, Control C and Control V.
Can't you get icon sets for draw.io?
What's that?
Can you get like icon sets?
Oh yeah, I definitely can. Yeah, you don't have to do this. I just do this because most of what I end up drawing, there are not already icons for. And I like to use actual pictures. So I just threw a Dell R720, which is a common server that I use, which normally it's not a wireless. In fact, that's probably not an appropriate connection there. It would not be wired. It would be a network connection. So I might draw it like this. I'll draw it to that. And then I'll move my lines around because I want them to connect in a little bit different manner. And you can change the endpoints. You can make them arrows or not arrows. So draw.io, pretty easy to use, I think. It's not anchored. There you go. Now it's anchored. As long as there's an X there. If there's an O there, it's not anchored. If there's an X, then it is anchored to this icon. So you can move it all around. Or what some people do rather than using a line like that is they use a squiggly thing. That wasn't a squiggly line. I thought I grabbed a squiggly line. Excuse me. Anchor it to right there. Okay, so now those two things are anchored, and then I can, of course, move that around however I want. So draw.io, it's the most basic tool that you might use to draw a network diagram. This is one of the most important things that you're ever going to be doing as a network manager, is diagramming. I can't get rid of that. Cut. What is that one? Just drop too much random crap in here. So I'd like you guys, if you haven't done this already, start up draw.io, go to networking, start with this very simple map, an already wireless diagram, and then go from here. I would prefer you downloaded your own pictures, okay, and maybe change the scope of things, like you know, this is internet to a single office. You might want to make this even a little bit more complex and say, well, this is a firewall, and then I have multiple switches, and then this whole network here, I can highlight all of those items. Sorry. Drag all of those over to here and put another set of switches between this network, which might be a wireless network, and then add a whole nother network. I simply did Control C and Control V, created a second network there, and make another connecting line between these two networks. That one and this one. So I'd like you to build something a little more complex than that simple model. If you want to, and I know you don't have much to go on because you might not have already an existing network. Also, we can't really get into the EI lab anymore because what I used to tell people to do is I said, use the EI lab as an example of what a network model might look like, and then see if you can duplicate that in draw.io. So that's kind of what I want you to play with on the draw.io part of this. Best way to learn how to use this is start playing with it, but then also there's tons and tons of videos on how to use draw.io. I'm just duplicating more networks here. That's all I'm doing. Oops, I didn't mean to grab. I meant to grab all of that. So come up with an idea of something that you can draw a picture of, that you can draw a map of. Maybe it's a network at your house. Maybe it's a network at a restaurant that you've been to. And you don't have to know specifically where everything is. Just make stuff up and see what you can come up with. I'm sure you guys can all come up with some pretty good ideas there. Okay? And this automatically saves. That's a nice thing about doing it on Google Drive. I don't have to click save every time. You can click save, but it'll auto save it every once in a while on Google Drive. I recommend that you do the saving though. And then once you've got a network diagram that you would like me to look at, then simply share that draw.io document in Google Docs with me. You know, go to your Google Drive. What did I call it? Oh, I just call it untitled diagram.draw.io. You should obviously rename it. And then go into your Google My Drive and just simply share that file. Share it with profjake@gmail.com. I'm going to share it with my Yahoo account just because I don't want to share it myself. Okay, and then I'll go take a look at it, see what you got. I might make some suggestions. I might say, hey, that looks pretty cool. Can I use that? Or make some suggestions and say that's not complex enough. I don't feel that you experimented enough around in draw.io. Okay, so I'm making that a very simple, very open-ended assignment for you guys to play with.
Hey, Professor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the email they're supposed to share it with, please?
Oh, my Gmail account? I thought everybody knew that. Yeah.
Oh, is it just profjake@gmail?
Yeah. profjake@gmail.com.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't. Okay, that's my bad. I thought it maybe was something else, but yeah, I have that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, just share it with profjake@gmail.com or just profjake. I'm the only profjake on Gmail. Just share your draw.io with profjake.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay. Very, very simple assignment. Spend 20, 30 minutes on it though. I mean, spend a little bit of time so you get used to using it, because you will find that it's an invaluable tool for not just drawing network diagrams, but for drawing just about any kind of diagram you want, including entity relationship models. By the way, I'll give you guys a little advice. You'll probably, unless you have a very specific job, you'll probably never use or draw entity relationship models again. I've been in a lot of meetings with systems designers and integrators and systems analysis people. Never once have I seen an entity relationship model. I see hierarchy models all the time, lots of hierarchy charts, but don't really see entity relationship models, and I guess that's because they're not really designing the nuts and bolts of a database. Rahi, how do I get out of this group me, by the way? It's blowing my phone up.
I don't know.
How do I need to turn the app off.
You know what? I'll take care of you, man. I'll get you out of there.
My cell phone is blowing up. I guess I just exit the app. Bear with me for a sec, guys. You don't need to kick me out. I think I just need to close the app, right? The GroupMe app.
No, it'll keep sending you notifications.
Oh, all right. All right. I didn't bother to read any of the documentation on how to use GroupMe. I just went in there, like you said. Okay, so 4477. By the way, has anybody looked at the U of H calendar to see if it's changed at all? I can't type today. Doesn't look like it's changed at all, but let's see, spring 2020. Let's just take a look at this, everybody together. Looks like our last day of class for this semester is April 27th. Should you guys think that should be our official last day of class? Or should we just make it today? No, I'm kidding. Let's not make it today. So we got a little bit more time here. Oh, I guess I could go over the exam 2. Do you guys want to go over exam 2, or you want to finish up chapter 10 and get into chapter 11? What do you guys want to do?
You
wanna
can go
wait?
over it because I did a lot worse than I would have liked.
You did? You
Yeah, I
did a lot worse. Okay.
Yeah.
Well then, yeah, let's do that then. So let me pull up. I'm going to take it off the screen for just a minute. I'm going to go look at go into Grade Center here. And by the way, I have not officially gone into anybody's test to take a look at whether they made just little simple mistakes. I know some people did. Overall, the grades, when I scrolled through them, some of them were perfect, 100 grades. Some of them were tanked. So I mean, it's just kind of all over the place on the grades. Let's take a look here for exam 2. There's exam 3, exam 2. Yeah, so there's anything from 50 to 100 on it. Probably going to be a pretty good sized curve. So let's see if I can take a look at some of the most commonly missed multiple questions first of all. Maybe that's where some of you missed some of it. So let me do a little item analysis real quick here. I'll show y'all what I'm doing if you want to see this. This won't show grades, individual grades. It's going to run an analysis of the answers and who got, not who, but how many right answers, how many wrong answers, what questions people missed the most. Usually just takes a minute here to do this. Just in case that takes a while, let me go ahead and pull up the 4477 chapter 10. We're still finishing up chapter 10. We're just about at the end of that. I suspect, you know, that analysis usually happens pretty quickly, like within a couple of minutes. It probably is taking a lot longer because everybody is using Blackboard now, where they weren't before. So it might, I don't know, it might take a little while. So I'll pop in that as soon as it's done. Yeah, still waiting. Wow, crazy. Oh, by the way, one thing I didn't, this is kind of related to chapter 10. One thing I was working on Monday and some today, I was at an internet provider, excuse me, I was at a client site, and they had not ISDN, but they had a PRI line. So ISDN, by the way, is a similar technology to broadband. It is a broadband technology. So first of all, let's just talk about that, or finish talking about that. Broadband technologies usually is related to a dedicated connection. It's either going to be DSL or cable, or maybe it's fiber to the home, or it could have even been wireless, or anything else that's fixed based, which is higher bandwidth, is going to be called dedicated service. When we typically refer to broadband technologies, we're referring to a consumer or a low-grade technology service for our internet service. There is something else called ISDN, which used to be super popular, and I don't think it mentions it in these notes at all. No, I don't see it in the notes, so let me pull up a. What is ISDN? So I might ask this question on the test, but I don't want you to pay a whole lot of attention to what ISDN is, but I do want you to pay attention to what PRI is. So ISDN services was basically taking the traditional telephone line that was coming to your house and converting it from analog to digital, but you still had telephone numbers. Okay, so it is not considered broadband because it is a telephone number. You can a lot of times use the same physical wire that comes to your house or comes to your business, except the difference is you got a service which was called 2B plus D. Let me open up a WordPad document here. And you guys could go Google this stuff if you want it. It's probably not in the book. Pretty sure it's not. That was called basic rate ISDN. There's another thing called primary rate ISDN, which you will come in contact with most likely. That's PRI for short, and that's what I mentioned earlier. PRI is a 23B plus D. So let me explain to you really quickly what that means, okay? The B refers to the word bearer, and it refers to a channel. 2B refers to two channels. Now remember how I mentioned before a T1 line. A T1 is actually quantity 2464 kilobit per second, or 2464K channels. A PRI service is basically a T1 with special digital signaling over it. We take 23 of those PRI channels in the case of a PRI, and we use those for actual data, and we use the 24th channel for signaling, kind of like flow controller. That's where the telephone number comes in on the telephone call, because what both of these things are, what's common to both of these is that they are switched, and they are PSTN switched, or publicly switched telephone network switched, which means unlike a dedicated service, as long as you had a PRI or a BRI line from a local telephone company, you could get internet service from any other provider that also had PRI or BRI or some other ISDN service, and you could have an end-to-end connection. You would buy a modem, and you'd run special software on that modem, and you would have a telephone number for your BRI or your PRI line, and then you would get a telephone number from a PRI or a BRI provider and say, okay, what do I dial in on? They'd give you a number, you would dial it with your modem, and you would get an internet connection that way. PRI was a little bit less than 1.5 megabits per second. And that's because if you remember T1, we talked about this already, a T1 is 1.54 megabits per second. The difference is we're losing one channel, so it's 23B plus D. So all I want you to remember from this is that a PRI service is a special digital service which is carried over T1, and T1s have 24 channels in them, okay? And E1 from Europe has 23 channels in it. I was dealing with a PRI on Monday and a PRI today because there's a lot of legacy telephone equipment out there and switching equipment which is expecting to receive a PRI. I was working on a ShoreTel telephone system today. A couple months ago, I was working on an Avaya telephone system. Both of those have the capability of receiving a PRI line into it. Now, a PRI line looks just like a regular telephone line. It's either 2 or 4 wires. So on the back of one of these telephone devices, let's see if I can find a picture of one real quick. Here's one. So on the back of this ShoreTel box I was working with here, this is actually this is a telephone PBX. There's a processor in here in memory, and it's running software to emulate being a telephone switch. It's got LAN connections, but it's also got these T1 PRI connections. So traditionally, you would call your telephone company and you'd say, hey, I need you to feed me some telephone numbers. How many telephone numbers do you need? Well, I need, how about give me 20 telephone numbers? And they'd say, okay, well, in order to give you 20 telephone numbers, we have to give you 20 separate channels. So let's give you a PRI line. So they would give you a PRI telephone number. You actually got, in the case of a PRI, 23 telephone numbers. They would be carried in one physical wire and plugged into that port there, and then this ShoreTel or Avaya or whatever the PBX box was would digitally deal with all that telephone service. It's all code, it's all programming inside of here, and then you optionally had, you didn't have to have this, you optionally had a LAN port here, and then you might have on top of one of these telephone ports which you plugged in telephone actual telephone devices into. Now this one's designed, the one we're looking at here, this is designed so that it only has a LAN port, because the way that you connect your phones is your telephone was a VoIP phone. So does everybody know what a VoIP phone is?
Yes.
Maybe some of you don't. But a VoIP telephone, if you just Google for VoIP phone and you look for different images, rear, how about that? VoIP phone rear. See if we can find the back of one. On the back of most of the, and I know I've mentioned this before in class, most telephones these days don't specifically connect to your PBX server. Your PBX server is sitting in your computer room somewhere, or sitting in a rack, or sitting in the cloud, and you connect to it simply by any network connection. So this is the back of a Polycom VVX 500, it looks like. Ethernet cable coming into there from somewhere else. This machine, this phone gets an IP address, and then it has programming in it with a username and a password and an account number, and it logs into that PBX switch. So we're not feeding telephone lines directly into this device because it's a real VoIP phone. Or maybe I should say it's not a real phone. But to get back to what I was talking about, these devices, which a lot of offices already had, ShoreTel, Avaya, Adtran, Toshiba, Panasonic, they all make some sort of a PBX that you can run in your office that was either a little standalone box like this and you fed it with a PRI from the phone company, But most phone companies aren't providing you PRIs anymore, but they can provide you a PRI over cable or over fiber. So in the case of the office I was working with about a month ago, and I'm still working with them, they have Comcast cable service. And then it connects to PRI. So you can still order this. It's called trunking service with Comcast. So it is, ISDN is still alive. So if you say, well, I've got 11 to 50 employees here, you have a purpose service bundle, let's say, no, I need internet service. And they'll give you a little bit or a little offer here on what they think that you need. Actually, I'm not gonna fill all that in. But on the cable provider, they had the Comcast cable modem that had an Ethernet port on the back of it. And that Ethernet port fed into a PRI converter, like an Adtran Atlas 800. See if I can find one of those real quick. Rear. I always like to look at the back of everything. We only care about the backs of most things anyway, right? So here's the back of one of the devices I was using. Here, this Adtran Atlas. It's got a fiber connection on it and an Ethernet connection. So Comcast is bringing me an Ethernet cable on their cable service from the cable modem. I feed it into this, or actually into this port here. And then these 4 ports right here, these are basically emulating or pretending to be the old school telephone ports. Those even kind of look like old school telephone ports if you zoomed in, excuse me, zoomed in on that a little bit closer. We take a telephone cable and we feed that into the ShoreTel box. That's a PRI, 23 channels. So that means you can have 23 phone lines, or actually in the case of Comcast or AT&T, they can actually put as many telephone numbers as you want because they're no longer related to the channels. But my point is that PRI service is still alive and well, mostly because people still have a lot of this legacy telephone equipment. One of the most difficult things to replace in a network is wherever the network is touching the end user, in other words, the terminals. It's easy to replace a modem. It's easy to replace a router and an internet connection, but it's difficult to replace a phone system because that touches everybody. You have to basically replace, you can't just replace one phone at a time. In most offices, you have to replace the entire thing in everybody's phone at one time. So it's an expensive, complicated, invasive procedure. So what Comcast is providing and AT&T is providing is they say, keep your own old phone system and we'll bring you this PRI service in, which is pretending to be a T1, but it's not really T1. So you will still have some experience possibly with this T1 service. So it's not dead yet. The overall, the digital service is called ISDN. You either order a BRI, which only has 2 channels, 2 telephone numbers, or you order a PRI, which has 23 telephone numbers. And if you need more than 23, you just simply order more PRIs. And you'll notice that that Adtran box that I showed you had 4 PRI ports on it. So this box right here basically translate 23 times 4, or what's 23 times 4? 92. Yeah, it's 92 channels. So basically you can have 92 channels into a phone system, 92 individual phone lines, or 92 concurrent telephone calls. Okay, regardless of the numbers, 92 concurrent telephone calls. So my point is you will be experiencing ISDN and T1, whether you realize it or not. So keep these name brands in mind. The Adtran Adtran makes several things. They make phones, but one thing that they're very popular for is they're making T1 and PRI converters. They convert Ethernet to T1 or PRI. Okay. Cisco also makes similar items to that, but Adtran overwhelmingly was the big player in that market. So getting back to the chapter 10, let's just see whatever else was in those notes that I wanted to highlight or point out. Where'd my PowerPoint go? Okay, we talked about that already. We talked about a little bit about that internet governance. What we didn't get to, and this is important. I wanted to point this out. And maybe some of you have heard this term before, net neutrality. How many people have heard that term, net neutrality?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
What does it mean?
Well, so right now, internet, it's like if you buy internet, you get complete access to the internet and whatever you want to do with it. So it's like you turn on a faucet and internet comes out. And they're trying to make it so that internet service would be like tiered, kind of like cable, where you have like premium cable and then basic cable and stuff like that. So they would have different tiers for internet service. So if all you want to do is look at Instagram, you pay the $5 a month internet. But if you want to do like, I don't know, FTP and stuff like that, then you have to pay for like a higher tier and things like that. So,
or if you want to look at different channels. So the way I describe net neutrality to most people, Rahi, is that I say it's kind of like comparing Dish Network to Comcast or Xfinity Cable to Sling TV to Hulu to Disney. Is you subscribe to these different services. And, you know, if you wanted to watch a certain show that comes on a certain network or made by a certain studio, you might be able to watch it on Hulu, but not Disney. Or you might be able to watch it on Sling, but not Hulu. Or you might be able to watch it on the CBS All Access network, for example. So what's happening is that the content creators are trying to make deals with the carriers of the content, the people that deliver the data to you. So right now, for example, if you wanted to watch a certain show, like Barry, has anybody ever heard that show, Barry?
yeah, it comes on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on Netflix now. Or here's another one, Westworld.
It's an HBO show.
Okay. Or what's that new Star Trek one, the Picard show? I don't know if I spelled that right or not, but it's basically like, you know, the adventures of Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek. You have to subscribe to not just that channel, because you may not be able to even watch it over the internet. Like, I don't think you can watch Barry or Westworld or Picard on the internet. You have to subscribe to a service that they've contracted with. Like in the case of Barry, it's only available on HBO, the latest versions of it. Same thing with Westworld. You got to subscribe to HBO. If you want to watch that Picard show, you got to subscribe to CBS All Access. That's kind of similar to what's going on with the issue of net neutrality. Should the internet be neutral or not? Meaning, should the content be accessible regardless of what your internet provider is? So your internet provider, think of them as HBO or Sling. First of all, who's heard of Sling? Or who's not heard of Sling? Sling TV. It's kind of it's a replacement. It's an internet-based replacement for Dish or Xfinity or DirecTV And they have a lot of the same content. They don't have all of it, but they have a lot of it. Who's ever heard of Locast, by the way?
Oh,
If you haven't looked,
yeah, the
Locast is
local
awesome.
broadcasts. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
So if you've never heard of Locast, you need to go check Locast out, by the way, for $5 a month. You can watch all of the Houston television stations, even the ones that the local cable stations, labeled local cable carriers don't give you. So it's pretty neat stuff. But the issue of net neutrality is, should all content that's put on the quote unquote internet be available from every carrier? Who gets to see what? And it's all dependent on, possibly dependent on your provider. So a lot of you in here have Xfinity cable, and you've been going to certain websites or you've been listening to certain music channels. Let's say, just as an example, let's say that one of these streaming music services like Spotify, let's say they decide to sign an exclusive contract with AT&T and to make their services available only through the AT&T network. So if you're on Xfinity and you're paying for Xfinity, you're SOL. You will not be able to get your Spotify anymore if they sign a contract like that. And that right now, and it depends on kind of where we are in time, right now that's actually totally legal to do. It did not used to be legal to do. And this will probably change again. But it's possible that that would happen. So what would that force you to do as an end user? You would either have to leave Xfinity and sign up with an AT&T account or a wireless account, or get something through AT&T, or have both of them. So it's increasing your internet costs. So right now, most of the internet is available through most channels. But that's a big issue that is concerning. Not just is it available, but is it throttled? That's a big deal. And so your cell carriers, they will sign exclusive deals with movie companies or with content providers such as Amazon or Hulu. And you may also be able to get those channels from other providers, but if AT&T is paid to sign a contract with Hulu or Amazon, they will guarantee that your throughput is a certain minimum speed, or that it's fast enough, or that you'll be able to get to that content and stream it faster, or it won't be choppy, or it'll be more reliable. So they are doing stuff like that now. So Hulu might be throttling, if they don't have a contract signed with a certain carrier, they may be throttling their data. Right now, the people that have the control are not the not the carriers, but the content providers. Make sure you understand what that term means, a content provider. That's anybody that either owns or licenses or has the ability to provide the content of what it is that you're seeing on the internet, whereas the carrier is simply the road, the medium. That's the service that you pay for, the roadway or the path, to get the data from wherever it is to you. The content provider is actually who made this stuff. Okay, movie studios are content providers. Music companies are content providers. Our individual artists are content providers. So make sure you understand what those two terms are and how they relate to each other, and how net neutrality gets in the way. Potentially gets in the way. One thing that a lot of people are saying that are for net neutrality and against throttling and against making exclusive deals like this is that they're saying the internet is a utility. So what does that mean if I say something is a utility? Like electricity is a utility. Sling's ads creep you out? Why do they creep you out, Joel?
Oh, it's just because they always like they have that one couple and like they'll invite another couple over and they'll be like, "Oh, do y'all want to like sling?" in a very suggestive way, and then the other couple is all creeped out, but then it's just the TV thing. Like
I
it's
haven't
just
seen
weird
that
to
one. That
me.
sounds super nasty.
Yeah, like they're
Uh,
making you think that it's something else, and then they're like, "Oh no, we're just watching TV," and it's just kind of like
okay, well
kind of
that's a
weird to
little
me.
creepy.
Yeah.
And you know why? They're probably pointing this service to a certain demographic. But
Oh
anyway,
yeah.
so what does that mean if I say internet is a utility or electricity? I assume you guys all agree that you could not function in society without electricity or water or air, although air is free, but water is certainly not free, and electricity is certainly not free, but it's freely available. In other words, you have the right to water and you have the right to electricity. You cannot be discriminated against simply based on where you live. So the content provider for our electricity in our area, we generally have one content provider. That is Reliant Energy, or it's actually CenterPoint Energy. They own that big power plant down there south of Houston. We have multiple electric providers that you can sign up for, but they're not really providing you the service to your home. They're just providing you the billing. But because electricity is a utility, anybody that wants to can become a telephone company. Excuse me, or an electric company, because everybody has access to that service, and then they can turn around and resell it to you. So the argument is the internet a utility, and what do you guys think?
I think what we're experiencing right now kind of proves that it's totally a utility.
I agree with that. And so the argument by the big companies, and there's a lot of companies, usually it's content providers and carriers. Like if you were to ask the CEO of Sprint or Verizon or AT&T how they felt about net neutrality, they'd say, "Oh no, that's a bad thing. You don't want net neutrality because we can be competitive and we can give you better deals." But I'll tell you from an end user standpoint, or from a content user or a content receiver, like most people and most companies are, it's a bad thing, because if you've signed a contract with a certain provider and that's your only road for your internet service to your house, and suddenly stuff that you used to be able to get to, websites you used to be able to go to, or databases that you used to be able to get access to, are now no longer available through that service. How does that affect you, and does it harm you? And so right now we're all using different flavors of internet, but and I think it's kind of proving that the internet is a utility. Can we get by without can a business, let's put it in terms of a business, can a business get by without having an internet connection? And I think the answer is no, at least right now. So keep an eye on that subject, because it changes from time to time as to whether the federal government has to step in, because the federal government is trying to keep a monopoly or an unfair situation from happening, not necessarily a monopoly, but like a cartel, where it's an agreement between two companies. So if a content provider and a content carrier get together and sign a contract with each other, an exclusive contract, and then that content turns out to be important content, like watching Barry or watching Westworld or these different entertainment things, that's not really a necessity. But getting access to COVID-19 data, or how to prevent getting sick, things like that, very, very important stuff. That's not fair to limit or prevent that information from getting to you based on what internet provider that you have.
But isn't it already kind of like a cartel? Because if you look at the internet providers that are the carriers that are available, you got AT, like in here in Houston, we have two. You have Comcast and AT&T, and like on
Right.
the East Coast, it's like Verizon. So they like carefully carve out these parts of the country. So they're like, okay, we're going to sell internet in this area, and you can sell internet in your area, and never do they cross because they
Well,
don't want
they sort
competition.
of do. The landline parts don't cross, and the way that the carriers are getting away with it is they're saying, well, you have your choice of cellular providers, and you can go to whatever cellular provider you want, and we all overlap in the same areas. But for most businesses don't use cellular service or fixed wireless service. We have to use dedicated services, and as you said, there's very few choices in a lot of cases. It's AT&T is the only thing in some areas, and Comcast is the only thing in some areas, and in other areas, the only thing you can do is get a satellite in some other areas. So if the internet providers or the roads that are coming or near you for your business don't have contracts with these content providers, it's not really fair. You have to literally move to physically a different location to change it. So yeah, and there already are AT&T owns a lot of content creation companies.
Yeah, they own they own
ABC,
HBO.
yeah, HBO and AT&T. ABC equals Disney, which also equals the Go network, which also equals ESPN. I mean, there's really most of the content carriers got smart and said, let's start buying content providers so that we can start separating up separating it up like that. So you can't just have one. Like I don't have one streaming service. I subscribe to 4 because my girlfriend's kids want to watch stuff on the Disney Channel, so I have to subscribe to that. Even though there's only one thing I ever watch on that, which is The Mandalorian. And there's only two things I only ever watch on HBO, which is Barry and Westworld. Let's take a look at just the last couple of things in chapter 10 so we can get into chapter 11 that's important because I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time on net neutrality. Make sure you know who this group is, the National Science Foundation. They are a large organization that's funded by both public and private sources, funded by governments as well as private and commercial businesses. And they basically help pay for research into new technologies. They've been around for a long time. They do everything from give little $1,000 scholarships to junior high school kids to giving $1 billion to Verizon if they roll out 5G, for example. So they're kind of all over the map. But the National Science Foundation is helping to fund something called Internet 2, which is basically an overlay of the backbone that we have. So this looks similar to an existing IXP backbone that we already have in the United States, but it uses different roads and different technology at layer 2. So it's a different layer 1 and a different layer 2 technology. It's using exclusively fiber, and it's using a different type of Ethernet, which is more efficient. In order to be on Internet 2 and send your traffic on Internet 2, your internet provider in your local area, like here we are down here in Houston, we would have to hope that Xfinity or AT&T or InTouch or whoever we're using has a connection to the local inter-exchange point in Houston that uses Internet 2. Think of this as an alternate freeway system across the United States, kind of like we have an alternate freeway system in the Houston area. You can either take the surface roads, or you can take what's called the freeway. And why do we call it a freeway? Because it's free, quote unquote free. Or you can take the toll roads. So we really have 3. If you take a look at it in Houston, we have 3 ways to get from point A to point Z in Houston. You can either take surface roads, which would be the slower way to go. You can take the freeways, which would be the faster ways to go. Or you can pay a little bit more and take the toll roads, which are kind of like equivalent to Internet 2. And then I guess the analogy starts to break down when you think, well, okay, I can get a helicopter and fly from point A to point Z, but then that would be like equivalent to having your own satellite. So Internet 2, it's not that prevalent yet. The closest thing that I can think that is similar to this is 5G. 5G is being offered, but 5G is very, very localized and very limited, only in certain areas, and it's wireless, and it's intended to give services to end users, whereas Internet 2 is intended to give new roads, big, thick highways between internet providers in major cities. So it's similar to what 5G is doing. It's providing wider roads, faster roads, but it's between internet providers. You would not sign up for Internet 2. Excuse me. So just the last little slide here in this Internet chapter is Internet is increasing in capacity, and it needs to increase in capacity for two main reasons. Not just that there's more and more people in the world, but what two things do you think are occurring which are driving? Let's pretend that we're not having a COVID-19 issue right now. But what are the two major things that are driving the growth of the internet?
I know that the FCC recommends 25 megabits per second for distance education. So people need to meet that standard.
Yeah, but okay, so that's and there might be more than two things, but here's the two major things that I know of that are driving the internet. One is the amount of content that you own or create that you are putting in the cloud and needing access to your archived data. No companies of any size anymore store things locally, or they might store a simple backup locally, but everything these days lives in a cloud. In other words, it's off-site. So if everything that you used to own, all your organizational data, remember how I mentioned earlier in the class, the organizational data, that is the most expensive, most important asset of your business. If you lose your organizational data, you're out of business. That is your accounts receivable, your customer lists, what people owe you, the intellectual property that you've created, the drawings, the writings, whatever that your company's done in electronic form. It's smart to store it in the cloud because we're trying to mitigate against the security threat of a building burning down or a local hard drive crashing or theft. There's a lot of things that we're mitigating against. So it's smart to put things in the cloud, but because we're putting everything in the cloud, we need a fatter pipe, bigger roads. You know, our Ethernet connection locally in our businesses and our homes is fast enough, but now we're having to send everything across the internet. So that's one major reason, is the migration into the cloud. Cloud is causing the need to have faster internet. What else is causing the need to have faster internet? Any thoughts?
Probably like the amount of content we're consuming. Like, you know, if everybody's doing Netflix.
That's one of it too, but it's even more simple than that. It is that we are consuming content that was traditionally delivered to us a different way. Internet-based, such as what we're doing right now. We're teaching classes right now, which traditionally we teach them face-to-face. You don't use the internet to look at me while I'm in class teaching you, but now you're having to. What has that done, or what does that do to your need for internet? It's exponentially increased it because it's in its aggregate. And Comcast and AT&T are doing all they can just to keep their networks afloat right now because they're being so heavily used. So things that are migrating onto the internet. We don't watch TV anymore over the air. We watch it on the internet. So think of all of the things that you used to do manually, or that you used to do in person, or that you used to do on a different network, such as broadcast TV. Nobody does broadcast TV anymore. Everybody streams Netflix or whatever. Banking. Nobody goes to a bank anymore. Everybody does all of their banking online. Buying. Nobody goes to stores anymore. Or, I mean, people go to stores, but I mean, right now, no, everybody's using, you know, Amazon.com. Even so, even for the tangible items that you order, you're still not going to the store. You're using an internet connection. All the other stuff that you might be streaming. What about the, you know, alarms? Companies have alarm systems. They're no longer hardwired. They're doing everything over the internet. Video surveillance. There's tons and tons of stuff now. There's technologies that we haven't thought of. How about this? The stuff that's going on right now, telemedicine. What's telemedicine?
You Skype your doctor.
Yeah, your doctor Skypes you. You know what's going to be really hard to do? Teledentistry. I don't think that's a thing yet. I don't know how that could possibly be a thing, but it might have to be a thing somehow. But there's going to have to be some new technologies developed, and there will be. There will be technologies developed to where you can, over the internet, get your teeth fixed. You know, it's not. We don't have that kind of technology yet. There's not a robot sitting in your house that a dentist can. Wouldn't that be scary though? A dentist remotely manipulating a robot that's in your house to pull a tooth out of your mouth or to put a crown on you. It'd be kind of scary, but that technology will be here. But all of these things, the thing that's similar to all of these is it's done over distance. That's what's increasing the need for better and faster and more secure internet. And this COVID-19 thing that we're going through right now has just accelerated all of this, move into the cloud and move into us not leaving our homes. And ultimately, I don't know how long it's going to take. Maybe it's 50 years from now, maybe it's 500 years from now. Humans won't move very much. You know, we'll literally stay within a 50-foot bubble, or maybe even smaller. That's just the kind of the way things are going, and that's because the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. In terms of, not in terms of everything, but in terms of security, the ability to provide, not if you're Amish. Okay, so that's pretty much it for chapter 10. Let's just start to get into chapter 11. But I wanted to point out several of these things, and I will ask questions about this on the test, like, why is the internet growing? It's not just because the population is growing. It's because people are inventing new things to put on the internet, and things that, or what about newspapers? Does anybody still read a newspaper or magazine? Does anybody still have a magazine subscription? Those are pretty much dead, or they've been converted into online services. Any magazines that didn't change to an online service are dead. Playboy, and I'll take an adult example, Playboy, for example. Playboy magazine figured out very early on that medium is going to die, and so they started a Playboy channel, and they got Playboy.com. House, which is their closest competitor, held on to that old medium, and so Penthouse is pretty much dead. I don't know if anybody remembers the brand, Bob and Penthouse versus what's that guy's name with Playboy? Howard
Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, and then there's Hustler, which is even a dirtier adult magazine. Larry Flint, but he's long dead, so we don't worry about that. Gambling, that's interesting. Gambling, that's another thing that's really increased the need for better and faster and internet. So many people are gambling on the internet now, unfortunately. Especially with all of the casinos in Las Vegas and Louisiana being shut down right now. Okay, so it's already 3:38. Let me see. Actually, rather than get into chapter 11, let me see if this content analysis ever finished on the exam, and let's just look at that real quick. I think you guys would probably rather do that, right?
Yeah.
And I need to do it because I think I need to probably make some pretty significant changes on the grading part. So bear with me. Let me see if it finished. Item analysis. No analysis available yet. Crazy. Okay, well, we'll have to look at it another time. So guys, since it's so close to 4 o'clock, I'm going to go ahead and stop the class now. But I want you to do a little bit more research in the things that I mentioned today, specifically PRI, the ad trend, those brands that I mentioned. I know I don't have it on this page. Where did I put it? I may have closed it already. But let me retype them again. So I want you to go Google for ad trend and PRI. You can Google for those two things together. Go Google for Comcast trunking service. Just to give you an overview of what these offerings are from these services. Google for ISDN, PRI, and ISDN, BRI, just so that gives you a little bit of historical background as to why these two things still exist. Go look up VoIP if you're not familiar with VoIP. Hopefully you are already familiar with VoIP, but that will be a question on exam 3 is what is VoIP? I'm assuming, and maybe that's incorrect, I'm incorrectly assuming that everybody knows what VoIP is, voice over IP. And then the things that we just talked about, go Google for NSF and Internet 2. And also go Google for net neutrality. Read up on those items, and then also make sure that you have started experimenting around with draw.io. Start creating some sort of a map. Make sure you remember to share it, whatever you come up with. See what you can come up with tonight. Okay, spend 5-10 minutes on it. Don't spend that much time on it. Just get something up. Take that sample network diagram, move it around, add some of your own icons. Just do the copy and paste like I did. And share that document profjake@gmail.com. Make sure you save that document as something that is like MIS 4477, draw.io. And put your name on there somehow. Otherwise, I'm not going to know whose is what. Something like that. If you have a unique enough name like Rahi or Austin, well, Austin's not that unique, but unique to me. So save it like that. And then I'll go check those things out. I'm not going to grade them yet. I just want to see if you're going in the right direction. And I'll send you an email or a comment. I'll say, oh, that looks pretty good. Or no, you basically just copied and pasted the template. I want you to add a little bit more to it. I want you to move some things around. I want you to experiment with some of those tools on there. Okay, so I will see you guys online again on Monday, definitely. But in the meantime, I'm going to try, I know I keep saying this, but I'm going to try to do a makeup class I want to talk a little bit more about backbone network. So I'll have a little makeup class. And like I told my 4397 class, even after the semester's over, which is coming up pretty soon, April, what do we figure it was, April 27th? I'll still do some more of these Zoom meetings because I don't want you guys to stop learning this stuff. In fact, once you're done and you get your MIS degree, that's only the beginning. We're just scratching the surface here. You're going to be Googling the crap out of everything for the rest of your MIS career. It's not like you learned how to do math formulas or you learned some information about history and then you can apply that. You've got to stay current on this stuff. So I'll keep doing some Zoom meetings even after the end of the semester. Okay? Any comment? What's Playboy? Really? You don't know what Playboy is? Go to playboy.com. Make sure that you're 18 or over. Okay, I'm not condoning it, and your mom used to. Don't tell me that. Yeah, so I don't want to be accused of sexual harassment or anything like that. It's adult entertainment for those of you that don't know what it is. And the only reason I use that as an example is because it's been in. It was in the news a lot. Playboy versus Penthouse, and how Penthouse, they're pretty much dead because they did not embrace digital media. They didn't convert, in other words, okay? So I'll see you guys online, if not sometime this weekend, and I'll post a link, definitely on Monday by 2:30. Goodbye.